Hey, good to see you again.
You to the joint meeting with the Provo School District and the Provo Municipal Council. It's 12:06 and we're convened in the City Center Conference Room. This meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube, Provo City Council, where it will also be available for on-demand viewing. Please be aware that the microphones in the room, which where are they? Upstairs? The new one's up there. Yep. Pick up noise of paper and other rustling objects. Further be aware that microphones can pick up side conversations. We'll begin with a roll call. Cliff
Strachan. George Handley.
Rebecca Nielsen, School Board.
Keith Rattel, Superintendent.
Dave Knapp, City Council.
Dave Sewell, City Council.
Julie Rush, School Board.
Gary Winterton, City Council.
David Harding, City Council.
Melanie Hall, School Board. Mayor Kafusi. Wayne Parker with the city.
Stephanie Bryant, Business Administrator at the district.
Thank you very much. And Rebecca will give us our invocation.
Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be here today as leaders from the city to come together and to collaborate and to do what we feel is best for those in our stewardship and in our city. And we're grateful for this opportunity to do that today. And we ask for thy blessing and thy spirit to be with us today, that we will be able to think clearly and be able to make good choices that will benefit those in our city. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We'll go to the first item, a discussion on Brixton Capital, with Brixton Capital. And Travis,
yes.
Nice to meet you.
So, appreciate
you being here.
I appreciate you guys carving out time. Again, glad to be before lunch. Bringing with me, I'm Travis King. I'm the CEO of Brixton Capital. I don't have a specific agenda today. The point of today was really just to put a face with the name. I think people have been hearing a lot about our firm over the last several weeks, and I thought it would be helpful to take advantage of the fact that having, I think, the council and the school district together, just to put a face to the name, tell you a little bit about why we love Provo, what we're doing here, what our plans are. I've got our Chief Investment Officer, Bob Emery, over here with me as well. So we're out here regularly. So my goal, I thought maybe might be helpful just by way of background, tell you a little bit about the firm, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how we found Provo. And when I say found Provo, I really do feel like we found it. It feels like it was kind of a hidden gem. The firm really grew out of a family office. So a family office that made most of its money in real estate investing over the last 35 years. So I've been partners with the founder of that family for about just over 10 years now. And one of the things that we did when he formed a family office is we created an investment arm that was really designed to be a steward of the family's capital. And the goal was to find opportunities that we felt were missed in the marketplace or overlooked. So we've been doing this a long time. It's really built on relationships. We're not the kind of guys that kind of like to come into a place real quickly and try to make a buck and leave. We're more about establishing long-term relationships in communities that we believe have extended value. So if you look at our firm today, we're really focused on the Western U.S. That's the markets that we've been investing in for a long period of time. And I think we've done lots of repeat transactions with multiple people, because what gives Brixton, I think, a differentiated edge is the fact that at the end of the day, we come out of that family environment. We're very open, we're very transparent, we spend lots of time building relationships. It's great because the way we found Provo was an interesting story. We actually came in to the mall when it was owned by a large public REIT. And we came in and were actually asked to help out a junior partner that was in the transaction that wasn't being treated very fairly. We came to the table and said, hey, we're happy to help. Long story short, what we realized is that the owner at that time of the mall was really not appreciating what Provo had to offer. It was really a forgotten stepchild. There's a large portfolio of a lot of different mall assets, and 99% of the time was spent on assets in Hawaii and New York and places that are very flashy. We came in, were really pleasantly surprised when we discovered all of the attributes that Provo had to offer. I personally felt right at home because it was one of the few places in the world where I can show up and tell people that I have 8 children and nobody looks at me weird. So that was a big benefit. I said, I'm home. I found a place. So that was great. As we started digging in, we just realized that there was so much untapped potential with a community that really values the quality of life that they have here, the tight-knit circle that they have as a community. There's a really special place here. And the more we started spending time, we said, wow, this is a place where we think we can really do a lot more with an asset that had been, for the most part, forgotten. So I think we were eyes wide open. I think we know what we were getting in for. Taking a mall that, we always say that Provo is the second mall in a one-mall town. And so we realized that it's got to be positioned the right way to be the right fit for the community. So that's really what we've been trying to spend our time on, is to do listening and try to match up what we have at the mall with what the community wants and needs. And I think when you do that, when you provide that, that's when you start having synergy, that's when you start having real success. So We love the types of things that, you know, when we started learning about the summer concert series and the family movie night, you know, the number of people it brought out, to have that sense of community is a perfect blank slate to build a project like this and build around community, because I look at the #1 main asset for the mall as being a place to attract community, for people to come spend time. That's why the internet, you know, Amazon has its place, but at the end of the day, it doesn't replace the fact that people want to go out, spend time with their neighbors, their community, and have a variety of things to be able to do, and I think that's what the mall is offering. So we're here to really focus on being able to do that. You know, we're not folks who are looking to, you know, spend some time and move on here. We love Provo. We'd like to continue to buy in Provo. I think Provo has been an absolutely, you know, outstanding place to partner. The city has been fantastic. I think we've told many other cities, we said it would be great if you could take a page out of Provo's playbook, because the partnership that comes from working with the city is so great, because I think you get a better product that is better for all the people as opposed to trying to be antagonistic. So we think it's been great, and we look forward to being able to continue to listen and learn what's best for the city as we move forward. So lots of moving parts, as I think everybody knows about there. We feel like we've got our work cut out for us for sure. But again, I think the wind at our back as we're moving through this that comes from all the good things happening at Provo and the support of the people in the city is a huge benefit to us. So that's a quick snapshot on us and who we are, but I thought maybe I might answer some questions. I know that there's probably a whole variety, but this is probably a good forum to at least maybe hit some of the burning questions that are out there.
So recently in our discussion, some people put out, well, gee, what's the future of a mall, of any mall? Some were pessimistic that malls don't have a future. Of course, you can see what is happening in Orem with them reinventing that mall several times over. And I have high hopes that you will be doing positive things and cementing the future of our mall. But how would you address those people that say that, you know, malls are just kind of passé?
Right, malls are a thing of the past, malls are dead. I think that's using a very broad brush. That is not applicable. I think malls are very much a case-by-case situation. I think there are a number of malls that don't serve a purpose anymore. A lot of times, I think when you looked at mall developers that were started really in the 70s and progressed through the end of the 80s, there got to be a part where these were just being stamped out. You'd go through and get a department store and you'd have enough little critical mass and you'd put a mall, you know, in every single market that you could. I think what's happened is a lot of those markets have basically been facing population decline. They've been in markets where a lot of people have been leaving. They're not dynamic, growing places. And as a result, you had a mall that might have been in a great location, but it's in a market that's very much tertiary market. There's people aren't wanting to go there, they're not growing. And as a result, the mall really struggles and suffers. I think most of those are going to end up being repurposed and become something else. I think that the malls in general that will survive are going to be those that offer really a mixed-use experience for the people that are there. There need to be multiple reasons to go to the mall. I don't think it's just shopping anymore. I think it's shopping. I think it's dining. I think it's entertainment. I think it's gathering. I think it's going to work. I think it's, you know, embracing a lot of the day-to-day Main Street life in that environment to provide convenience. And the things that we leave our house for on a daily basis. So I think you're wrapping all those together. We have some of those components today. If you look at, you know, the movie theater at Cinemark, that does very well and is a great draw. You know, a big part of what we want to do is be able to create you know, a park and be able to and utilize the best thing that Provo has to bring people together, because as it becomes multifaceted in the reasons that you're coming to the mall, that's what makes it more relevant. It's not just about a shopping transaction anymore. It's much more multifaceted.
I want to be this. Help me understand what it means to be a partner. What does that mean to you guys?
Sure, from the city's point of view. Part of it is I think it starts first and foremost with two-way listening, right? It's way too easy, I think, for developers to come in and want to imprint their idea on the community. And I think the same can also be true from the city to turn around and say, look, we have a plan and a vision and it has to be this. And sometimes that's not necessarily feasible or the right mix. And I think there's a listening back and forth between both groups to say, okay, let's make sure we get the best of things that work with the community that are also feasible. And I think when those two things happen, that creates partnership. And I think it's just open, honest transparency of saying, I hear what you're saying, and I understand it. Here's what works or doesn't work. I think as long as that remains a two-way street, that creates partnership, in my opinion. Does that answer your question? Sort of.
Sort of, because I love to listen, and I do that, and then there's always, as I listen, there's always an ask. It seems like, and sometimes I want to give, and sometimes I'm not sure that we have the capability at times, and so you're right. It's just a matter of talking and communicating together. You will be coming to the city and asking for things, and I think that that's great, and we hope that we can give.
And I think part of that conversation comes from, I think the asking never occurs in a vacuum, right? I think it's part of saying, hey, we all realize what we're trying to bring to the community. I think it's usually tied to say, hey, help us be able to borrow on some of the things that we're going to be able to create to bridge the gap to allow us to get there. It's kind of trying a way to break a stalemate or to break a catch-22. So I think that's part of the listening, is understanding if we can get some of those things now, it's almost no different than a mortgage. It's helping you get into a home that you're going to be able to have, that you can, you know, ultimately be able to know that you want to be there for the long term and make the numbers work. So that's where I think it works together, but it's got to make sense for everybody. I think it's very refreshing. There's a reason that California is losing lots of folks to Utah, and Utah, there's something that is missing in California. And it's common sense. There's probably a lot of things missing, but common sense. And common sense goes a long way, because at the end of the day, most of these projects come down to, if you have common sense and you're listening, I believe you can do almost anything.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say I'm really grateful that you discovered Provo and that you're here to invest for the long term. That's really exciting for me. Thank you.
I agree with that. I'm grateful for all that's happened over the last, it is amazing to me, all the things that you have done for our city. I am grateful for that.
Thank you for saying
and
that.
I do feel sad sometimes that we didn't choose your option at times. I recognize that there are, and yet you helped us so much with that. Thank you.
It was our pleasure. And again, we came through, we want what's best for the city, right? And Provo's got so many great things going for it. I'm almost cautious. I want to tell everybody about Provo, but then sometimes I want it to remain an undiscovered secret so we can continue to, you know, do what we do here. But it's a great city. You guys have a lot to be proud of.
My comments were very similar. You talked about, you've been in the news a lot in the last couple of weeks, and it's sometimes when you have a lot of passionate people about the community and you throw out some options, people really kind of advocate for the option they like best. And you know, there were some things I thought that were said by a few that probably were not helpful, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate that we are happy that you're here. We are looking forward to that partnership, and I think the vast majority of the community are you know, hopeful and are rooting for the mall and rooting for what you're talking about and your vision for the Provo Towne Centre and what the impact that it'll have on the surrounding community. So I think we're all excited to partner. I like what you said about listening and about vision. I think from what I've seen, I think we do a pretty good job about laying out a high-level vision, and then letting the details kind of work themselves out and finding out what's feasible to achieve that high level. I hope, you know, where it doesn't, we need to fix it. But I hope that vision stays high enough level, you know, that we're not dictating that you have to do this, you have to do that. It's just this is our end goal. Let's partner on how to get there.
And I appreciate what you're saying. You see things in the press sometimes too. I think it goes, you understand when issues get out there, it's hard to have perfect information and people feel passionately, and sometimes truths get distorted or things get said. I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just people are trying to do their best, right? They're trying to do what they think is best for the city. So I don't think there's any, we don't take it personally. I think I welcome the opportunity. Actually, that's why I love a face with the name. Sometimes it's easy, you know, a big bad developer from out of town comes in. You know, that's not who we are. So sometimes I think as people get to know one another, a lot of those things naturally subside. So thank you for the comment.
I want to make a comment, maybe a little bit more micro level than this. I just want to thank you guys, or whoever made the decision to allow the school district into that space at the Town Center Mall to establish that art gallery for our students.
It's right over there, so Scott, that was really Scott's brainchild.
No, it's fantastic. It really is, and every time I go in there and I see kids that I know who are displaying and participating, and I've heard from parents that have noticed that, and what a great opportunity it is for those kids that wouldn't be able to do that and have that kind of exposure somewhere else. So it's been great.
I love the extension, just, you know, Scott is an embodiment of how we look at things. Scott lives and breathes, and you realize that this isn't a job for him. This is how he lives and breathes, and it's refreshing. It's so far beyond the pale. We're very lucky to have somebody that cares so passionately about the community and the property. So I think that's a great example of it.
And that space has had an impact, a very specific impact.
It's great to hear that from the other end too, because the space looks great. It's great to hear it from the other side.
It's been noticed. So
that's great.
Cliff.
So I know you can't go into specifics, but what can you tell us about your plans going forward in the next year?
I can tell you that we really want to be able to create something that's going to be, like I was saying, mixed use, have multiple environments. We think that the project at some level is going to contain an office component. We think there's a potential multifamily component blended with the retail, and boosting what I think from the retail point of view, creating much more of a regional destination, something that really has draw, and I think it has to be differentiated from what else is out there. So there's a couple big things we have on that front that I think are moving that can really be game changers for the property, and then tying all that together with things that are going to be focused on family, focused on experience, focused on, you know, increasing the dining options. So it's really trying to hit on all of those facets to create something that's a multi-dimensional experience over there.
Anything else?
Well, again, I thank you very much for having me here. I know you guys have probably much more important business to get onto, but I really, for one, appreciate the time, and I hope I get to spend lots more time with all of you over the upcoming years. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
We will now go on to item number 2, an update on Timp-Kiwanis Park. And Doug, you do that? It's not Doug.
Thomas.
Thomas, sorry.
I think the lowering of the projector will take longer than the 3 slides that we have, so just kidding. No, I appreciate this opportunity to share with you an update of where we're at.
Cliff, it takes a minute to turn on, so it's on.
Yeah, it's on.
Of where we're at in this process with the Timp-Kiwanis Bounous Park and the conversion that we're contemplating for the park. We'll just wait here for this to come up.
8 seconds.
Should we count down? The old ones.
So where we're at in the process, this process has been ongoing for over 2 years now. You know, as we've looked at, as we received this, we've been working with the school district on this. Anyway, we are nearing the end of this conversion process, or the process where we submit to the National Park Service our proposal on this conversion. So as you can see, we started back in 2016. We're now, the end of the summer of 2018. So I really wanted to give you an update of where we're at right now. So the draft environmental assessment was released back on the 30th of July. It was noticed in the paper. It's available at the city center. There's a hard copy available there. It's also online on the Parks Projects webpage, where that can be reviewed by the public and anybody interested in that, and provide comments to
Thomas,
that.
can I interrupt you for a second? How are we letting people know about that? Are we,
So
you said in the paper.
It was noticed on the paper, that's noticed on the Parks Projects webpage. I sent, emails have been sent to the adjoining the 4 neighborhoods that are directly affected by this. And they were, and I followed up on those emails as well, just to make sure that those were received.
That helps me, I appreciate that.
Could I ask a question? So because I've been getting, I don't know if they're copies of emails that are also going to other people, but I've been encouraging them to, with comments about the EA.
Absolutely.
So they should be, and that deadline is
August 30th. Yeah, so it's a 30-day period. The reason we wanted to have the public hearing is we wanted to have it in the middle of the comment process. So.
And where are we sending those emails? Is it to you?
It's to tmckenna@provo.org.
MCKENNA?
Yes.
The hard copy of that is on the customer service counter downstairs.
So again, on the 21st, which is next week, we'll have the public hearing on this draft environmental assessment. After that happens, we will then prepare the final environmental assessment and then present that to City Council on September 11th. It will then be submitted to our state coordinator, Susan Zarcarisi. She's the coordinator for the National Park Service here in the state. And she will then review that and send that on to the National Park Service, where that document will be reviewed. There's a lot of reviews that goes through with because of there's some cultural resources there, some Native American artifacts there. It will go through some tribal coordination. And then the National Park Service will then make a decision on whether or not they accept this proposal for the conversion that we are proposing. We are anticipating that decision would be made in January, February, March of next year. It's a several month process that they go through and to determine whether or not it's a justified and a good conversion in their opinion. So, are there any other questions that you have? We're looking forward to meeting on the 21st. Ron Clegg, our consultant that is working with us in the school board, or in the school district, will be presenting there. And again, invite all those to attend and then present. We want to hear from everybody, those against it, those for it, and really figure out what is best. So.
Thomas, as far as the conversion, we're talking about the conversion to another piece of property. We're going to be comparing those, give people opportunities to discuss what that conversion can or will become. And
so when a property is converted, that money has to go towards a piece of property that is not already identified in a master plan. So the properties that we've determined as proposed sites, are not in the master plan. That's why it's, I mean, the one in Southwest Provo is the one of the reasons why we've chosen that site.
And we can talk about what we hope, what our vision for that piece of property is.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
To mitigate the site that had the, I guess the issues with the historical preservation is the mitigation site.
It is the mitigation site, it's not the.
So they do an EA on both of those, but it was the mitigation site that has those issues that we have to work through, or any possible development that would happen at the new site if this goes through.
Other questions?
Does the council have a further role in this? I mean, is there something we need to vote on, or what?
So on the 11th, once the comments have been addressed, we'll present the final environmental assessment on the 11th, where a resolution will be made on to move it, to actually submit it to the National Park Service.
So as far as that's concerned, it seems like what our previous city council discussion about this, was less about the conversion process and more about the functionality of the space under new jurisdiction, right? The EA is not going to really address that, right? So I guess what I'm wondering
the agreement made between the school district and the city.
Yeah, so will there be an opportunity? I mean, I just want to make sure that we're looking closely at, I know there has been conversation about possibility of a conservation easement as one way to resolve any potential conflict, so that space is still usable as a park, even if it's no longer officially designated as such. Anyway, that's where where my investment, at least on this issue, was making sure that space was as functionally the equivalent as we could possibly make it. And I just want to be clear about, so the EA won't address those specifics, right?
No.
So when we get the final EA, or let's see, when we go back to you're going to present that to us, but will we also be getting information about the status, like any specifics about how to protect that space's usage and access?
We could discuss it at the public hearing. Really, the public hearing is for the environmental assessment. Once the decision's made by the National Park Service that the conversion is good, then that's where I think where the discussions would happen.
Okay.
On the actual property transaction. What's gonna, conservation easement, MOU, things like that. That then would be the time for that to happen.
That becomes the question. Do we want to go through all that if we don't want it to happen? That's one of the concerns that I've got, is if we've got to the point that, no, we don't think this is going to happen, we don't want it to happen, then why go through the next process?
Right.
And so I think that's something that we need as a council and the school board need help on, to say, is this really what is good for our city?
Right. And I think, when we look at the presentation that will be given, what we've gone through, the process that we've gone through, the alternatives that we looked at, our recommendation as a staff is that this is a really good idea.
It's been a while and we've looked at a lot of different, so I may be a little fuzzy on this, but my recollection was last time that we heard this in a council meeting, Mr. McKay was presenting to us and all of that. My recollection is we didn't say like, yep, we fully signed off, that's 100%, but it's pretty much this is the direction we think we should be going. Let's move forward with it.
and.
The decision was made to add it to the surplus list?
Add it to the surplus list. Now, you know, if something drastic comes up in the EA or something new, you know, whatever, but I felt like we were pretty much signaling to the community, to the school board, to the staff that this is the direction that we're going, keep on it. And so while I agree, we need to do kind of a final sign off on it and find, like, does everything still make sense? But I hope we're not at the point where we're really questioning, like, do we even want to move forward with this? And also, I don't think it is beneficial to the community if we're giving mixed signals like, well, you know, we're still kind of up in the air on this. I mean, I think we should communicate as clearly as possible where we're at. And at least where I'm at is, you know, I'm 99% there, and then just want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and then, you know, I'm ready to move forward.
Dave?
So last time, the school board president mentioned that a conservation easement would be within the realm of what they felt they could do. And I think something like that would be really important to the neighborhood to kind of protect that along the lines of what Mr. Hamlin was saying. So is there a way that we can determine if that's going to happen before we have to make our final vote on it? Or I guess another way of asking it is, if we vote to send the EA on, will there be another opportunity to make sure that happens, or will it be out of our hands at that point?
Once the EA is sent on, and if it's approved, then the deals on the transaction of the property would then happen. Then that discussion on what the details are would happen. There will be opportunity there to discuss that. If I'm misspeaking, then
That's my take on it, is it would get approved first, and then we would sit down and discuss the actual property transaction and the sale of the property to the school district. At which time I think the board's gonna have to sit down and determine what type of agreement they may want to enter into to make that sale occur. I think the word McKay used was a durable agreement. I don't know exactly what the school board's going to mean by a durable agreement. I think they still have to work through that, and obviously they can.
I think, I'm sorry.
No, please go.
No,
Because
and I wasn't at that meeting where McKay was speaking, so I'm not sure what was said, but I know that we haven't had extensive conversations about what an agreement like that would look like.
And that is what has concerned the neighborhoods, because they don't know what they're getting, and it would be nice to just have that out front and say, this is what a conservation agreement looks like, and then we can decide. And I agree with what's going on. I think this is the direction that to me makes a lot of sense. And I do feel sorry for the people that don't quite understand what they're getting at this point, because I'm not sure what I'm completely. The direction feels very good to me, and I'm not sure what it says yet.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I think, I mean, obviously the timeline's pretty flexible here in terms of this latter issue of the agreement between the city and the school and the neighborhood about the use of the property. I mean, it seemed to me that was kind of the linchpin question, right? It was the best way to compromise the different interests about this property was to make sure that in the conversion process, assuming the environmental assessment went through, assuming everything else was fine, that if that property was going to be preserved in some way in perpetuity to reassure the public that this is what it's going to look like and this is what it's going to be, this is the kind of access that it will have for public use. That seemed to be the linchpin. So the sooner we get that information, I think the more reassuring that is for everybody involved. I don't know that that's a reason to rush the process. I just think that's the fact that it isn't yet concrete and resolved is one of the reasons why there's just going to continue to be anxiety about it until that does get resolved. So that's, you know, anyway, I think that's a pretty important
And how we go about doing that, I guess, is the next question then.
I was just going to say, to clarify, the school board has had discussions about their intent and what they want to do, and keeping it green space and maintaining the pavilion and the park and et cetera. So it's not new news, obviously, the school board, it's just nothing's been determined. I guess concrete's probably.
Yeah, I think the issue seemed to be, you know, and again, I think conservation easement seemed one of the best ways to do this, but the issue was durability, I guess is McKay's phrase for it, but something that was not going to put people ill at ease by the thought that, okay, this school board now likes that idea, but in 5 more years, a different school board feels differently, and suddenly the property use changes and it vanishes as they know it.
Anything else?
No, I appreciate where we're at, and I think we're going in the right direction, and I still have questions. And so I guess we can, I guess the issue is we deal with them as they come up. And we look forward to, I'm just talking here to understand, is the next thing after we get the EA is to work on that conservation or some kind of
real estate purchase.
Work on the real estate purchase.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I have looked at the report and everything, and it's really thorough, and it's great, I think. And so I have confidence in it, but I wonder if you guys have any sort of feeling of what the National Park Service will think of it. Is it going to be approved? Is it hard to say?
It's hard. I mean, it's hard to say. The conversations that we've had, you know, specifically dealing with the cultural artifacts that are on site. We work directly with the State Historic Preservation Office. They're very positive. They love how we're, you know, the impact, or how we're the low impact that this type of complex will have, rather than a developer coming in and just, you know, doing what they would like, per se. But,
so everybody feels hopeful, at least. I'm just curious if it's something that we're going to get surprised on. And
from all indicators that I have, I don't see any huge. I mean, there will be things to work through, but it seems very positive.
Okay. Of course, it's hard to anticipate surprises, right?
It always is.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
You said that you sent out emails to the neighborhoods. Was that just for the Timp-Kiwanis Park neighborhoods? Or
There
was
are
that
the four adjoining neighborhoods.
Okay, have you talked to those people on the west side of town where that new park would affect them down there?
We have not talked to them specifically.
Just thought that might be a good way to get people excited about it down on the end.
Yeah, I agree. That's good.
They had to be careful about that for quite some time.
Yeah, just with the property and the confidentiality of that, it's been a rigorous process and a lot of hoops to jump through, and we're excited where it's at right now.
I'm glad that we're to the stage where we can now start talking about it. I look forward to some nice big announcements and some publicity about the regional sports park. And I would say that it's something that I think all of Provo, and really even much of Utah County, should be getting very excited for. It's not just a park that's going to benefit the near neighbors. This is something that is going to have a positive impact on quality of life of everyone in Provo. So I'm excited about it. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I mean, I am very excited about it.
so can we have that same email sent to the neighborhoods down on the west side, where it would directly affect them as well, where they can, so that they can have the opportunity to weigh in as well?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Again, we welcome your comments and want your comments and your opinions and thoughts on it. So.
I have one final question. Are you all at liberty yet to discuss what kind of revenues that park's going to bring in?
Our conservative estimates, just the economic benefit, is we're looking at about $11 million a year. Not directly from but just the overall citywide and countywide.
Economic benefits.
Yeah.
That's kind of why the county tourism board got really involved in this process too, and have actually pledged money if this process goes through towards the development of that park, because they're really excited side about the economic impact. And rarely does Parks and Recreation dive into the economic impact element, but this is where we're talking over 20 fields at one site, which really makes it an attractive element for attracting regional and national tournaments and combining with the Tourism Bureau to bring people to our community.
Point of clarification, the area that is being converted, it's just one part of the overall thing, so that's not the 11 million just from the one piece, it's from the whole complex.
Right, because it's going to be larger than just the conversion piece.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Appreciate all, this is a hard process.
It is.
And thank you for all the effort that you've gone through to get us where we are.
Thank you.
Yes. Officer Grossman, thank you for being here with us. We're going to give you a couple minutes here to bring us up to date on the opening of the new high school here.
Very good. By the way, I wasn't prepared to do this today. I got a call or text at the last minute, so.
My fault.
No, you're good. No. School board, city council, mayor, Wayne, thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak. I'm Captain Todd Grossgebauer. I'm newly assigned over the special operations for the Provo Police Department. The school resource officer assignment falls within that parameter. Yesterday, or actually on Wednesday, we had the opening of Provo High School. I had the privilege of being down there. We had created a strategic plan working with the district and working with engineering and the police department to kind of have a heavy presence. The traffic on 1390 and Lake Shore, or Lakeview, very, very heavy. I think the concerns with respect to speed, those were mitigated by the volume. So we actually had our traffic units that were there and present, and they sat there with their arms folded because there was really not much for them to do. Parking, the no parking, and some of those things that were along the route kind of created some challenges. We actually had our parking enforcement out there the night of the open house to let people see the changes and have given warnings. And I'd been working with engineering, Shane Winters, and those folks that had been working with the district. The school every year, schools, to bring everybody to speed, the school itself, the sites create a SNAP plan where they evaluate the safe approach for children to the environment, to the schools themselves. Those plans are submitted to the city, actually the traffic folks that are tied into the state. And from there, that's where they develop the crosswalks, the speed zones, the routes for children to get there. So I think all of that had been done. I was unfamiliar with the process up to that point, and I kind of got into it at the last minute, and I've been getting fed with a fire hose, but we're trying to bring everything up. We're out there, our presence is there. We're working very closely with the school district. I've been working very closely with Doug Finch and Gary Wilson and those folks. Been talking with Shane Winters. They had come in and changed within the parameters of the elementary. There was one school crossing zone. The engineering study had been done, and it showed that there was not a need or a requirement to have somebody present. So that plan itself, the school district mitigated that by having a safety person kind of cover that crosswalk. I know there's been a lot of concern with the neighborhood that was expressed with the district. This year when they came in and re-engineered that, they created 2 crosswalks, put in lights. The lights were not completely done by the opening day of school. They actually were all set up ready to go, and the power had not been connected with the final permitting. That's been done as of today. It's interesting, kids go where kids go. They didn't use the crosswalks. All of the parents parked at the across the street of the church. Let me back up. Provo High School, and the opening day of Provo High School, the church had a plan because they actually had people present who had placed cones to prevent people from coming into the church parking lot. And so I didn't know how that was going to have an impact, but it did. Retraining people to the area and the environment does take a few days. Chet said it went much, from his perspective, it went much smoother today. Going back over to the elementary school, I'm not trying to skip around, but from my perspective, I had gone from the high school over to the elementary school to help actually walk kids through the crosswalks, and the parents parked over in the parking lot and then walked right across the middle of the road with no crosswalk. So it was one of those things where we were just trying to figure out those engineering issues, and I think from our perspective, the city and the engineering department is going to go back down and reassess all that, the whole environment. So in the zone that didn't require somebody, now there's 2 zones, and we believe that the numbers will be there to justify both. We're just working through some of the logistics. I think we had a total of 10 officers down there working that area, working closely, trying to figure out some of those issues. I took pictures. I don't have those with me. I sent those to our engineering department, some of the school resource officers. I took pictures of 1390. It was backed clear out to Geneva Road. There was actually traffic on Geneva Road that was trying to make a left-hand turn off of Geneva Road in the turn lanes, and there's only enough for about 2.5 cars. So I talked to engineering about talking to UDOT and DOT about extending that for a longer left turn lane, maybe coming in and adjusting the timing on the lights, and those are things that are much out of my realm. The roundabout, access to the school. I think some of the challenges also are that some of the roads are still nearing completion or haven't been completed. Chet believes that that will mostly be mitigated. Chet Walcott is Sergeant Chet Walcott, our school resource sergeant. He believes a lot of that will be mitigated once those roads are opened up and people have an understanding of where the good drop-off zones and the flow in and out of the school. We want to be here. We're good stewards of what we do. We love the kids. I've been involved in the school program for over 20 years to some level or some degree. It takes a lot of people to make sure that they're safe. You know, we kind of recognized with the concerns from the neighborhood, which are valid. They identified some key points. But we also knew that the timing of Provo High School versus the elementary school may mitigate some of that with the number of vehicles and the volume, very similar to Edgemont and Timpview. And that seemed to kind of play out. So I don't know what else. What questions can I answer?
Have any questions?
On that issue with Lakeview, of the parents parking in the church parking lot and parents just crossing the street, are they bringing their kids back with them when they come,
But they're taking them across.
That's what I'm saying, they're coming into the school, grabbing their kids and then taking them back?
No, the time I observed, they were actually pulling in to drop off. They all exited the vehicle, crossed the road with kids.
So that was during drop-off time?
During drop-off time.
Got it.
And they in turn, there's a new principal out there, and there's a new principal at a couple of the other schools, and I know that they're concerned because obviously as a site-based principal, they're like, all this stuff falls to me. We want to help them, so we were there, and we were in those zones to help cross. I'll be honest with you, we have a challenge filling crossing guard locations, and it's not new to anybody. We have literally gone through, the district this year has really come forward, and they're willing to help us with some safety patrols, and we're still working that out through an MOU. But there are areas where, like for example, with the creation of the Lakeview and those two zones, that's 2 additional spots. We can't even staff the ones that we've got. And yet we believe that there are some in the school or around the city that with proper engineering and reevaluation, we might be able to mitigate a few of those and remove some that have been existing that are no longer used. As an example, Canyon Crest had a zone where we had a crossing guard that didn't show up for almost a month. And we didn't know it. And when we found out, not one complaint had come in during that time because there was nobody crossing. And yet, I believe if we take that crossing out, it'll raise concern. So we have to kind of go through and work with everybody. I had suggested to the district and with Doug Finch, with Gary, that we create a committee, that we get Provo Engineering, that we get police, that we get the district, we even get some of the principals or those that are responsible for creating those SNAP plans, do a comprehensive review of each of the sites, determine, because from our perspective, there's many things that can be refactored, and then literally figure out the numbers that we truly need, and then work with the district on creating or covering some of those zones. The safety patrol that the district created last year helped a lot, and yet we've got zones this year that when we don't get them covered, the very first response that goes is to the SRO. Well, the school district wants the school resource officers in the school, and yet when we can't get the crossing guards in those spots, we have to pull those officers from the schools into the crossing guards. So it's one of these things where if everybody comes together, I think we can come together and create some effective strategies and meet everybody's needs. So, what other questions? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm over Lakeview, and so I just was hoping that some of those kinds of problems would subside with all the new engineering there. And when you said that, I thought, darn it. Well, that's one thing we were trying to avoid with all the new engineering. So
yeah, and Chet and I had gone out. When I got in the assignment, I got in the assignment on July 24th, and I immediately jumped into it knowing that I needed to support Marie, which is our crossing guard supervisor, and Chet and the school resource officer, so I jumped into it head first. We went down with engineering, looked at it, reevaluated it, saw how everything had been redesigned, even the no parking, stopping, and standing that had been placed in that area. to mitigate it. Well, there's only so much width of the road, and you got to put in your bike lanes, you got to put in the center dividers, you got to reduce speed zones. When the lights kick on, you're required by state statute to have people on the crosswalks. There's all these things that we were trying to figure out, and Chet and I both commented that the way that it was naturally configured, they were going to cross right in the middle of the road. And so I went down there, and I went down there with the hopes that everything was going to be perfect, and obviously we have some things that we can work on together. So
I just know they've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's a matter of retraining too.
Yeah, yeah, it is retraining, and that's where the SNAP plans come into play. When the principals create those, then they post those publicly, how kids get to and from school safely. We hope that we have a voice at that table, and we can identify with our engineering what we believe are better alternatives, or supporting the ones that are already in place. Provo High School today, when I went in, I took a different route. I went in on 620 past the roundabout, not one car. They were all locked on 1390, and they were all locked on Lakeview. And so I actually made it all the way to the school unmitigated when everybody else was locked in trying to figure that out. And they came to one intersection, and at that one intersection at Provo High School, everybody knows you have to yield when you turn left. Well, all the cars that were coming southbound that are turning right wouldn't stop to allow anybody coming north the ability to turn left. At the same time, there's not a crosswalk there, there's no painted lines, and yet kids were crossing at that zone. And then what I didn't see the day before, what I saw today was interesting, was all the bicyclists. All of a sudden you now had, you had northbound and other traffic there, you had kids crossing in areas that they probably shouldn't be crossing, and then all of a sudden the bicyclists kind of came into the zone. So there's a lot that we have to digest and figure out. Chet, anything? Sergeant Chet Walcott, got to give him a lot of credit. He's been working very hard with a lot of this to make sure that we're good to go.
I would just echo what you said.
We're very thankful, from my perspective in the police department, getting in this position. We've always felt that we've had a tremendous support of the school district. When we went into the schools, I remember when Dr. Harrington and those folks fought to get officers into the school, and I was one of those first officers. We're now up to 5. And I see how we are working now and the things that have changed. We're committed to the safety of the children of Provo. We're committed to providing a high-quality policing service. The reality is that the police officers that are placed in those schools have an obligation to protect everybody, and so there are times when they're called away due to assignments. As we're working through the MOU, the district and the teachers really want an armed presence or somebody there all the time, and we can't guarantee that. We can tell them we'll be there as often as we can, but the reality is what it is, and so we'll continue to work through that logistically and maybe identify if numbers need to change. But we believe that we have an incredible system, incredible people, and an incredible support structure. We're thankful for the district and the support that we get there, and we're absolutely thankful for the support that we get from the mayor and the council. That school program, to me, is probably one of the purest forms of community-based policing that we have. There is an officer assigned to those schools. They know those kids. They know that community. They know the principals. And they're dedicated to resolving crime issues, being humans first, protecting children. You know, when we first went in the schools, there was concerns about how the school resource officers would work within that environment. Within months, it's almost now, how would we work without them in that environment? So we work very well together. Any other questions that I can answer for you? Provo High and Lake, go ahead.
Just one question, and it has nothing to do with you probably, but we had reports of people going around train tracks when the arms were down, because the train track was broken, and the arms were broken, and I get why they'd go around if it's been there and no trains come for 5 minutes. They gotta do something.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I had a personal experience there. But day one, I went over to the UTA crossing, the front runner crossing. The arms were down. Front runner came by. It was the UP's line that was about 100 yards to the east. Had one arm down, one arm not. I actually stopped, personally got out, got the identification number, called the Union Pacific, because that was one of the concerns that I had people going around. I personally didn't see anybody violate any of those zones, but that's possible. The traffic volume was pretty heavy, and I really think the retraining component to it and relearning is very similar, and maybe this isn't the greatest comparison, but 1500 West Center, we used to have quite a few problems there, and we've not had hardly any now because of the re-engineering and everybody coming together to address that issue. Chet, what are your thoughts about the way things went today?
Talk about
Florida and the Provo High School.
Provo High School. Are you talking about just pedestrians getting through the crosswalk, or the
cars? Yeah, cars.
Cars. You know, ever since when UTA put the front runner in, they started putting those islands in and started divvying that out a little bit more. It made it a lot more difficult, like Captain was saying, for the cars to get around the arms and stuff like that. And anytime that you've got a broken arm and stuff like that, it's the discretion of the property owners. So front runner or the Union Pacific, who are going to be able to direct us on what we can do as far as getting cars across there. So anytime we get anything like that, when we're out there working, it's making a call to those agencies and finding out what we can do, how long it's going to be. Can we get lanes through there in a orderly fashion and stuff like that.
There are other areas I did not have a chance to personally observe, but I know that I'll go down there and continue to evaluate that and work with our engineering folks. Interestingly enough, this year with the UTA and the stuff that's coming in, UTA's had a heavy presence in police officers. They even helped us this year in the Freedom Festival. That is one of those things they specialize in. So if we believe that's an issue, I'll ask UTA for their help, and we'll have them come down and absolutely look at the crossings and failure to abide those safety devices and see if we can.
And I heard it was just a malfunction.
There was one that was malfunction.
And malfunctions happen, we get that.
Yeah, again today, to close things out, we are thankful. There are, we know that there are challenges with the volume and the road structuring and engineering, and I think there are some things that we may identify as we go forward, even working with the district and their engineers. The north drop-off zone has not been utilized because some of that road is still blocked off, and it's not been completed, and we believe that once all of that's opened up, it should kind of free that up a little bit. Coming back to the elementary school, that seems to be where the biggest concern has been with respect to the crossings and the reduced speed zones. We'll work with the neighborhood, the district, and the engineering folks, and absolutely pin down what we can. There are studies that still need to be completed, and until those studies are completed, we're committed to the safety of the children. And if we have to come in and take one of those zones out, put it in the center where they're actually funneling, or whether we keep those two zones and staff it the way that it is, that's something I think that we as a group can come together and have a good solution for. So.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do for us.
Thank you.
We need to make sure we're supporting you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick thought, I think we've said it before, but I think with the crossing guards and the difficulty in attracting and retaining reliable, responsible guards, I worry that this is an area where we're kind of penny wise and pound foolish, where we are trying to pay as little as possible to get these people, but when they don't show up, then we're pulling resource officers and others that we've invested huge amounts of money in. They're highly trained, highly specialized, and then they're being used for that, where that training isn't necessary. And so, again, I think we need to be smart about that, and it'd be nice. We need to figure out some way to attract and retain reliable, responsible crossing guards.
We actually think about that all the time, and the Marie, our crossing guard coordinator, she feels tremendous pressure, and yet she does a really good job. And we increased her pay just a little bit to try to keep her happy. I'm working very hard so that she knows she's supported and how valued she is. We put recruiting efforts out there. You've seen the cute little videos and the things that we've done. We'll continue to do that. Where I think we can make some real headway is the fact that the district's going to help this year with some safety patrols, and we're still trying to identify some of those key locations closer to the school where we can get the safety patrols, which are different than crossing guards. They're actually different. But with the school district's willingness to help out there, I was excited. I mean, there's some great opportunities coming, and so we'll see how that comes together, and we'll continue to work with the district and see how that program works. And again, on the crossing guards, you're right. If we can find those people that are good and trained, we'll try to do everything we can to retain them. It is a transient group, though. It's a challenging thing for her to manage, so we appreciate that support.
Don't mean to prolong it, but I need to add just a little bit of a different perspective on this. Our state risk management agency has told us they don't want us doing safety patrols. They don't want us doing any of that kind of stuff. They tell us the responsibility for crossing guards belongs in statute to the city, and we're trying to work around those things and contribute where we can, but there are limits to what we can do. So we'll pitch in as we're able to, but we also have to make sure everything we do is not gonna be rejected and shot down by our risk management department, and then that puts the district in financial peril and if something tragic were to happen. So we just have to find that balance, so that will work here.
Yeah, finding that balance is just to kind of to capitalize on what he's indicated. He's right. The district's had there's even the terminology and how you use some of the terminology, I think is for them important, and for us it's important. But from our perspective, we were actually getting to the point on the engineering side where we're like even down there at Lakeview, that engineering study said we didn't need to have one, and so. You know, then it comes down to logistics. Do we pull an SRO down to a spot where engineering says no, but the public's demanding yes? And so you have to kind of fight that balance. And the school board takes tremendous pressure, you know, and so all those things are equaled out and valued. We're just thankful that the district's willing to consider it, and we'll see how that works as we go forward. We want to be very careful too, putting them in any kind of liability situation. We also recognize that if a worst case scenario for us, if we came in and re-engineered, there may be crossing guards and zones that we shut down that have historically been staffed because we're actually going above and beyond. And when it comes to staffing, I think you know it's a balance. It's a very delicate balance. So kids are really important, but also having other stuff covered is important too. So I hope that answered everybody's question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Move on to item number 3, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just give a quick summary as to where the Mayor and Council have been on the proposed replacement of the City Hall and Public Safety Complex here. Interestingly enough, the bond to build this facility was passed in 1968, which is exactly 50 years ago this year. Oh, that we could build again 64,000 square feet for $3 million. I wish we had 1950 construction numbers. But the building is experiencing some pretty serious challenges. Not unlike Timp-Kiwanis, we are coming apart at the seams. We sit on some challenging ground here, and we're starting to see some pretty substantial cracking that's occurring from foundation to roof line. We recognize that we are not in a seismically safe environment here. Should we have a mild tremor, virtually everything that we would need to respond to a public safety challenge would be likely under tons of concrete. And so we began looking as early as 2012 a lot more seriously at what to do about this facility. We recognized we were coming up to a point where we had to invest millions of dollars in a building that was approaching 40 years old at the time, now 50 years old almost. And what do we do with that? Do we continue to put good money into an old facility, or do we consider potential of a rebuild? So in 2012 and 2013, we started doing some space analysis and some structural engineering review of our existing campus here. We've talked to the council several times a year about these issues as they've been coming up, and there was a lot of concern about does a bond to replace, to build public safety or to do a major upgrade to this building, does that create a chilling effect on other potential funding opportunities for some of our partners? And so for the last number of years, we've kind of taken a back seat, recognizing that we probably need to let the schools get their first bond underway and process going before we took a really serious look at it. So this year, a number of factors led us to a more robust discussion. One of those, we heard a presentation from Brixton Capital today. One of those was the availability of the Sears building at the Provo Towne Centre Mall, which has about the right number of square feet to accommodate City Hall and public safety. And we recognized that would not be on the table for long. They were actively marketing it to other potential office clients, and so that sort of, given that opportunity to at least think about that alternative, we began to dive a little deeper. We retained an architect who began updating space needs and looking at potentials of how we might redevelop on this property, and so we identified a couple of months ago 3 kind of key options for replacement or upgrade of the city center complex. So one of those was to buy and remodel the Sears property at the mall. One was to build a new public safety center at seismic level 4 standards, so despite a mild earthquake or a moderate earthquake, we could still be functional in an operation for police, fire, and emergency dispatch. And then to make some minor improvements to the existing city hall, keep it largely intact, but to do some seismic upgrades and do some roof replacements and a variety of other things that needed to be done to stretch its useful life a longer period of time. And then the third option was to essentially scrape and build new. So to build a new city hall and a new police, fire, and dispatch headquarters, and then take down the existing facilities and either use that for parking or for potential redevelopment or some other opportunities. And so we began a process of about 4 or 5 weeks of public hearings, open houses, public meetings. We commissioned a likely voter survey. We did focus groups to look at the mood of the public and what kinds of concerns they had about our facilities. And to no one's big surprise, when we did our focus groups, we asked, tell us your favorite city-owned building. At which point we got blank stares from 13 people in both groups who could not identify a single city-owned building in Provo. And so we recognized we had a very significant uphill battle from an education standpoint. And so as we move forward, it became clear from the market research that while at initial approach only 34–35% of our likely voters said they would support a bond issue for city facilities. After going through a process with them of looking at the pros and cons, arguments for and arguments against, that process, at the end of a 15-minute survey, that number totally switched over. So it came to 65–35 in favor of a bond for those facilities. And so armed with that information, then we began the process of trying to choose the best option. And a week ago Tuesday, the Municipal Council held a 3-hour public comment period and discussion.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, it felt like it, didn't it? And the council unanimously selected what we've called option 3, which is the scrape and build new. General sense was we ought to be making a 50-year decision at a minimum instead of looking at doing patchwork, and even the mall, as attractive as it was financially, did not get us a 50-year solution. And there was concern about leaving downtown. Those were kind of the 2 key components, I think, that entered into the council's decision process. So the decision was made to put a bond issue on the ballot in November to build a new police, fire, and dispatch headquarters and replace the city offices. So we're now in the process of developing, now that we've narrowed the options down to 1, we're now trying to put a lot more detail into the public outreach effort. So we've asked our architect to do a couple of different site plans on this block. We've invited developers to come talk to us about the potential of either doing a redevelopment project in conjunction with City Hall Public Safety Building on this block, or potentially having a developer acquire another block or 2 downtown and explore the idea of a land trade where we could relocate our facilities to a different piece of property and then have this entire 2-block sort of blank canvas except for the Covey Center to work through. So that's kind of where we are in the process. We've opened the door to do additional tours. If any of you'd like to come over and take a tour of the facilities as they exist today, it's probably our best public education effort so far has been to get people actually in the building and take a look at what it looks like. If all you see in this building is the customer service center, the council chamber, and the mayor and council offices, you don't get a very good feel for the kind of dire straits the building is in. takes getting into the underground parking area, walking through the police facility, getting up and looking at decks and roof lines and those kinds of things to really kind of get a sense of the struggle. Additionally, just we'll mention that option 3 also includes replacement of the fire station on North Canyon Road, Fire Station 2. That was originally built as a home in the mid-1950s. Was acquired by the city in the late 60s, added on to multiple times to create some semblance of a fire station, but that was in an era when we had no female firefighters, and right now, because of the lack of facilities in that fire station, we can't have a female firefighter there. They share sleeping quarters and living quarters and so on, and it's got similar building challenges, and so those would be the 3 things that will be included in the bond on the ballot. And so with that, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, that's just kind of a very quick thumbnail sketch of the last probably better part of a year that we've been actively engaged in trying to figure out a good solution. So.
Quick question.
Yes.
What constitutes downtown when you say you're looking at maybe even finding a different place in downtown? Where's officially downtown?
That's a very good question. I think we have generally, our core downtown zone, which is kind of the best definition I think we have, sort of runs from, I would probably argue, the railroad tracks to 5th North and probably 4th East to 5th West, maybe even a little further west than that. But I think that's kind of what we perceive as the core of downtown.
Any other questions about that? I've heard people start to pit us against the school, and we can't do that.
We don't want to do that.
We don't want to do that, and we can't do that. We have important needs here. I see Officer Gostebauer here. These guys are really sitting on each other's laps, basically. And we need to get some support. We're not safe with what we got, and we are having a hard time keeping great officers here in our community. We train them, and then they go to other places because the working conditions are bad. Dave?
So I think one of the relevant needs are the substandard facilities for our police officers. And the comments of the police chief were very important in deciding which option was chosen. And his comments about building something that is purpose-built to meet the needs of the police department, and also in the right locations, so you don't have to struggle with how to deal with the station being right next to the public at the mall. So those were compelling arguments. And for those that say that, well, you chose the more expensive option, well, it's kind of like buying a cheap used car. It's cheap up front, but when you go through and you see that it only gets 12 miles to the gallon and you have to repair it every week, you should have bought that new car that got 45 miles to the gallon and has a warranty and actually was designed, you picked the options and you got what you wanted instead of making do. And in the 50-year scheme of things, we calculated all those numbers and it was only like an 8.75% difference, maybe. And so for an 8% difference in cost, you get something that is really meets the needs of the police department rather than a makeshift, make-do solution at the mall, which, there were pros and cons, but the more you look at the money, it just is deceiving to say that we chose the really high-priced option because in the long run, they're both about the same money.
And as I think about what happened last year with the school bond, I felt that the council was real supportive of what we, of the school and the things that they were going after. And we want to continue to be that supportive. And we hope that you will recognize our needs. I guess that's the reason for this discussion today, is to say we've got some real needs here in our community with the police and with fire. We need to address those as well. And we hope that we'll have your support going forward in this. And we need to be partners in this, because we're all going after the same dollar. And we need to just work together so we can get what we can to make the best community we've got. It's tough. We are all in tough places. And we get to, that's why we get the big bucks, they tell me, and so that we can make those hard decisions. And as we go forward here, we just wanted you to be aware of where we were at, wherever we're going. We have some real needs, and we hope you'll be supportive in helping us get those needs covered. There.
So this just is a great segue into the whole purpose of us working with the school district at a higher level than probably has ever been done before. They've never had a mayor that was on the Board of Education, and so this is really fun for me. So I'm going to turn the time over to Isaac. We just have a few minutes presentation of another event we're trying to do to bring us together.
We have Ian Dalton here, who's our graphic designer, who put together the little image you'll see. I'll stand up here for so you can see me. I'm Isaac Paxman. Some of you may know my wife, Liz, who works in the Provo School District. I'm proud to be married to her. We had this idea, one of the things that's been great for the mayor, she said, hey, let's look at ways we can, build a sense of community from this unique opportunity to sort of influence things that is good for everyone, no real downside, not political at all. And we're proud of some of the things that have happened already with that. But one more idea was this Provo's Got Talent contest that we thought would be good for the community as a whole, but something we could work with the school district on as well. And our initial, we've had a few meetings on this, and we wanted to at least present with you the guidelines, and we're open to any input from anyone at the school district on it. The actual finale would be on March 30th. It's a Saturday night, but a few days before that, on March 26th, we thought we'd have a sort of K through 12 semifinal. And our thought was, we think, I know at least at Rock Canyon there's been talent shows in the past. We thought if we got the school district to know that we'll take your top 2, we'll look at our numbers, and maybe we can take 3 from each school that wants to have a talent show. They'll advance to the semifinals for that age group of sort of K to 12 students, and then we'll choose 3 from that to go to the finale. Thank you, Emily. So that's the basic structure of it. Most people will join this contest by submitting a video submission. But for the schools, we thought, hey, why not? For any school that wants to, hold a talent contest and let them know that the top 2 at least would advance to the semifinal. So that's the basic idea. Does anybody have any questions or input or initial reaction to that, especially from the school district?
Do you have a link on this yet?
No. Okay. No, this is just a quick mock-up. But we're preparing a document that we can send to the school district. If there's anyone in particular you think we ought to first work with, we're happy to do that.
Caleb and me, and then we'll blitz it out.
Great. Okay. Well, we appreciate that. One question I guess I had is, do PTAs, are they in charge of some of these as opposed to the schools themselves?
Yeah, the PTA is in charge of the talent shows.
Okay, so we want to figure out how to...
I'm in charge with, I know your wife from Rock Canyon.
Great.
Yeah, so, and I've actually done the talent show. And it's more, so this is kind of fun to have something extra to go along with it, but it's never been judged before, so it's been more of a, that's the thing that I'm concerned about.
That's good feedback.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to be judging at school time.
Because we want it to be more just like,
just
hey,
a
let
showcase.
anybody show up. And we've had kids show up and that they show, this is how you make a burrito.
No
I
tears.
Mean,
Yeah. I remember watching 2 girls do hula hoops for probably 10 minutes, I swear, and we just kept cheering the whole time. There was no variation at all.
Yeah, it's a night to showcase the kids, whether or not they're good or not. And they're all fantastic.
Good feedback. Let's talk and make sure that we don't. Yeah, I don't want any tears over this introduction to it because you didn't win, and so anyway, we'll circulate this, and feel free to call me and let's talk through that, because yeah, we don't want to step on toes that way. So, was there any other comments?
I was just going to say, I know my kids' school does theirs right at the beginning. So the sooner the better on this, because it's gonna happen at the carnival, that's always the back-to-school carnival at our school, so if it's, I don't know, if we can get it out quicker, then, I mean, sooner than later, that would be helpful.
Well, and I know we're on such limited time, but does anybody want to give their input on whether it's a bad idea to inject judging and winners at the school level?
I just wonder if a hybrid approach, so you have your non-judging talent show come, and then let the participants know if you want, there's going to be a citywide one that you can apply for.
Or it could easily just, two good acts could be asked to move on, or
Maybe-
whatever.
maybe sort of quietly.
Without an official judging panel, making them all feel self-conscious.
Just the kind of two that stood out.
If the
you just kind of
PTA
get
president just approaches two of the better ones and asks them to move on, that
To the
could easily work.
semifinals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and getting the date out early enough that they might already have it set when that is.
Yep.
Which ours is usually sometimes like April-ish.
Okay, yes,
So-
that wouldn't work for this,
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
I think also there's some schools that the talent show isn't a big thing, but it might be. If they were made aware of something like,
I should mention,
high
that there's
schools-
at least $1,000 prize for the winner and 100 for 10 other
There you go.
participants. So prize
Yeah.
money may change it for some to want to participate.
Well, I just think that a lot of the talent show at some schools, like, that's kind of what they're known for, and others might do one, others might not do something like that at all. Or they kind of go back and forth, and it is PTA driven typically, and so I just think, like Melanie said and Rebecca said, getting the word out sooner rather than later, so that if they do want to do something in this, probably in the spring, and at some of those schools, would be helpful, so they would at least have the option to piggyback onto what you're doing.
Anything else? Okay, thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you. We'll go on item number 4. And Dave, I'll let you take this one. This is one you wanted to put on, or sure. We just take, we don't want to keep too much time, so if you want to show it for us.
So right now before the planning commission is an item, the petitioner is Tatiana Quinn asking for a change in family definition from our current definition, which is those related or at most 3 unrelated persons living in a home or condo or whatever dwelling. And her request is to change that to 4, either citywide or in the southeast in a couple of neighborhoods, which would be in the Provo South neighborhoods. So one of the things that she presented was the, I guess you'd say, typical situation where a townhome or a condo is renting for $1,600, which equates to 4 singles paying $400 apiece. Now, to say that's typical, that is an example, but I don't know that it's typical. So we're looking into what is the average household, family make, and the median income of a household versus the median mortgage or rent payment, and it seems to be coming in closer to the $1,200, $1,300 range of what people are currently paying. Some of the new listings are higher, but and then when you calculate the median income of a family and say, well, how much can they afford, and it's again in that let's say $1,300 range. So does that tends to equate to 3 singles paying roughly $400 rather than 4 singles. So the question then becomes, which is the parity, the equity, the equal opportunity for a family that makes the average income to rent something that was often designed to be affordable family housing, but right now it could be 3 singles or a family, and that seems to offer rough parity or equal opportunity. But if you bump it up to the 4,
where it's 1,600, and the new listings are actually 500 a room, so that could be as high as 2,000. The family may not be able to afford the rent. And we have had some landlords recently tell families, I'm going to raise the rent because I can get more by renting it room by room than you can pay right now, and you can stay or go, it's your choice, I'm just going to raise the rent. So how many rooms and how much per room is critical to whether we're going to have an equal opportunity for a family or a group of singles to rent housing. And I think that impacts you in so much as if it is changed to 4 and if that gives advantage to one group over the other, then you will see fewer families, and that will impact the schools. So if I'm wrong on the presentation, let me know, but that's kind of how I'm looking at the numbers, and just wanted to see if you had any concerns as a school board or opinions. Jim?
Having lived through some of this, and my neighborhood is obviously pretty impacted by this, as well as Dave, I don't know how impacted yours, but I think yours is impacted. You know, I am sympathetic and understanding that I'm taking kind of the school board hat off right now and putting on a neighborhood resident hat. So this is representing Jim Pedersen, neighborhood resident, not board member for my comments. But having dealt with that in the past, even as a neighborhood chair, having dealt with that similar issue, you know, I'm sympathetic to the economics. I'm sympathetic to someone who purchases a home and then they decide they want to find some supplemental income perhaps to help it become more affordable for them. I'm very sympathetic to that, but at the same time, what you pointed out becomes a real possibility. We have watched in my neighborhood over the last few years the number of families continually go down, down, down. And all the demographics in terms, I think, of the enrollment at Timpanogos, and Keith, you might maybe be a little more attuned to that, have not altered significantly. If anything, they maybe have gone up a bit. I think that's because they dropped from a wider area than just my neighborhood. But looking at just my neighborhood, we have a lot more rentals. And I don't mean to cast aspersions on any landlord in particular, but in some things I'm doing recently in the neighborhood, as I have needed to go out and visit some places that are rentals, I've been shocked by the conditions that I have found. And so I'm concerned that increasing occupancy brings with it also the opportunity for more neglect by some landlords, not all. So I have some significant concerns. I know 3 took a long debate to even settle on that, I believe, in the past with the city, as we look at trying to determine what family or constitutes the equivalent of a family. Having said that, I value the energy that singles bring into a neighborhood. I like that variety that comes in, but I have some concerns about increasing that density. And I will admit, part of what I'm basing this on is my personal experience. When I first got to Provo as a graduate student, we lived in a cul-de-sac. And it started out with families, and over time, more and more singles moved in. And these were some really nice townhomes, and they would have sometimes 6 or 8 singles in those townhomes. And there were several occasions, and one in particular, where they had a party, and if you can envision parked back to back, probably 50 vehicles in the cul-de-sac, and then just as congested around the outside. If there had been any type of major emergency, it would have been virtually impossible to get emergency medical personnel in, or law enforcement personnel. And again, it's not because they were bad, but you know, you get enthused and caught up in the moment. There were other times where on the other side of my street, on 970 West, there were groups that were having parties, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up and go over and wait for the music to stop, and then bang on the door until somebody answered to ask them to turn the music down. And that was after 2 or 3 neighbors had called me and asked if there's anything I could do.
Jim, you can always call the police. We don't want you to go by yourself at 3 in the morning to
I
a
did that
party.
as a neighborhood chair, and I felt relatively confident. And the more humorous side of that is the young man that opened the door was one of my students.
Oh, that
He was pretty embarrassed.
So Jim,
but
your
yeah.
experience there may have been before BYU brought in their boundary.
And that was before, admittedly, before BYU brought in their boundaries, but even now, in my neighborhood, we've got a complex that has been traditionally for families and is now converted to all singles. And I'm not by any means opposed to that, but, you know, they're kind of moved a little bit away from the more central part of the neighborhood, so I think it's a good use of that property personally in this particular setting. But I have some concerns about increasing that, and then parking for my neighborhood is a real big issue. In the past, you didn't have a big deal, but there are sometimes you can walk down and it's almost like wall-to-wall cars. And when there's not adequate off-street parking, there are some who, with that off-street parking, they begin to use the front yard as the parking.
Jim, I'm going to interrupt you here. You took off your hat as the school board, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And
Anyway.
what I'd like to do is put that school board back on track. Is there anything from
Anyway,
the school board
I'm sorry
rather
for
than personal?
editorializing there, but I just, you know, but the comment that was made, if I look at it from the school board perspective, as families go down, enrollment of students go down, and we have invested significantly in new facilities, we would hate, personal opinion, I would hate to see us struggle with more enrollment issues. Personal opinion, as a board member.
I think one of my questions would be, and I sit on that, I mean, I know this is a pretty tough conversation, but I am wondering, and maybe this is something that Keith, we could look at to see what, if our enrollment is being impacted to this point, what's happening in our schools. Actually, that's a question, that's something maybe we can talk about as a board. To see, because you had said that when you saw those changes in your neighborhood, you didn't necessarily think that the school was impacted.
Yeah, and
So as a school board, I think that would be a question we would want to talk about.
We'd appreciate that. We're having this discussion right now, and it's an important discussion. It's hot and heavy, and so we'd like any information back from you. George?
Yeah, I have a hard time knowing whether or not we have all the data we need, because, I mean, it seems to me another part of the equation is if according to some statistics I've seen that single professionals are leaving Provo, we're losing a tax base that would help the schools. I don't know what the demographic trends are indicating anyway in terms of the ratio of people marrying later in Provo than they used to, or families just in a lower number than they used to be. And if that's the case, can we assume that this is creating the problem or not? I mean, so I just feel like there's a lot of data that I don't know how to get my mind around.
You know what, and I appreciate that, and I think what we'll do is we'll see what we can find for the next meeting or so, because I know that 5 of us have another meeting right now too. So we appreciate you coming today. Is there any other things that says, any questions that we can bring up to get on the agenda for the next meeting possibly, or any other concerns that you want to talk about quickly now? Thank you for coming. We appreciate you so much, and we will adjourn this meeting.